Hello, Star Trek fans. Welcome to ReBingeIT. This is the ReBinge Star Trek Voyager podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we are rebinging Star Trek Voyager from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 3, Episode 15, Coda. This episode aired January 29th, 1997. Before we talk about this one, any updates on the previous episode, which was Alter Ego with Tuvok and the sad alien lady?
Oh, that was a good one. In some ways, you could actually look at that as kind of a really dark episode. I kind of feel for her. She's obviously suffering from something.
Yeah.
And sort of Tuvok made her realize that, maybe there should be more to life.
Yeah, she was definitely hiding from some trauma, trying to convince herself she was happy there. But I think the point was, hopefully, she saw the light, that was time to go home.
Yeah.
And Tuvok realized he's on his own if he makes no effort with the crew.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That I did like.
So, yeah, that was good. Although it seems like we recorded that a long time ago because we recorded a different episode out of order, and it's very confusing. We don't ever do that. We did that for the first time, and now my brain is confused.
I will ask the question of, why is this episode called Coda? I was trying to think why.
Well, I had to look it up because I didn't know what Coda meant, and it's like the end of something, the concluding section of a dance, like a ballet, which they do mention in this episode. Or the concluding passage of a piece or movement, typically forming an addition to the basic structure. So there's lots of ways you could look at that in this episode.
The ballet, that would tie back to Janeway performing ballet in the talent contest.
Yeah, and it nearly being the end of her.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
I wonder if it's because we experience the end of Janeway over and over in this episode.
Oh, true. Yes. Yeah. We lose her multiple times.
Yeah. So I have the notes this week. So are you ready?
Yes, you do. It's over to you. I am ready to go.
In the cold open, Janeway is marching through a Voyager hallway when Neelix rushes up to chat about the previous evening. We don't mention what exactly the event was from the previous evening, but Neelix wants to make it a regular function. He kind of awkwardly asks if next time she could keep Tuvok busy on the bridge, and Janeway kind of smiles and says it will be their little secret. Now we go to Janeway and Chuckles in a shuttle, and we learn that last night's event was actually a bit of a talent show.
I see Chuckles is still remaining the preferred name.
He might be sprinkled throughout this this episode. Harry played the clarinet, and Janeway did some kind of ballet dance, and apparently Tuvok read Vulcan poetry.
I may have mentioned this in Deep Space Nine, but I expect Vulcan poetry to be very much like Vogon poetry.
What is that?
Hitchhiker's Guide. The second worst poetry in the galaxy.
I would imagine it to be quite journalistic,
Yeah.
No need for ornate words.
Interesting.
Which would make it a bit dull.
Interesting that you would see it that way. I would wonder whether they would want to go out of their way to use linguistic tricks in Vulcan that wouldn't translate. Like they'd be making Vulcan plays on words. That would be nonsensical in another language.
I guess that's possible. I was thinking it would be more like they took poetry and tried to make it logical. So they were just describing the thing, that was maybe being referenced in the poetry, but wasn't being explicitly pointed out. But the Vulcans would explicitly point it out.
Yes. And I would see it as they would be making lots of linguistic or grammatical twists or tricks in it. So the Vulcans could sit there and analyze about how much they knew about language.
Like a puzzle.
Yes.
To show how smart they are. Okay. Sure. I get that.
And then they would spend like 6 hours overanalyzing the piece of poetry.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be entertainment. It would be more an intellectual exercise in logic.
But again, to show their superiority.
Well, they're very creative people.
The most creative.
Yes.
When we have emotions, it's the most emotions.
Yes.
When we're creative, it's the most creative.
Oh, well, that was Spock's father in Trek 2009. Emotions run deep in our people, perhaps more so than even humans. Yes, of course he would say that.
I think Tuvok has said that too. They're so full of it.
Yeah.
I do like the joke here between Chuckles and Janeway when Chuckles says he doesn't want to perform in the talent show, and she suggests that maybe he could phaser an apple off of her head. And he says, "Oh, sounds great. If I miss, I get to be captain."
Yes.
That was cute.
I do think the relationship between these two, I think the actual chemistry and the writing and the acting between these two really has kind of turned a corner.
Yeah, it's very natural, I would say, at this point. Yeah.
And Beltran's portrayal of Chakotay does seem a lot more relaxed now.
Well, we see that on not just Star Trek, but anytime a show lasts for a couple of years, then the actors start to get comfortable in those roles and they start to feel more like people. Like some of my favorite stuff on Next Gen happened once everybody seemed to just chill out into their roles, and then it became more about the characters than it did about the sci-fi. So yeah, I think that's what's happening here.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The shuttle hits some turbulence as we're approaching a planet and they're forced to land. But we are hit by ion lightning. That's a new one.
That's a good one.
And we end up crashing instead of landing.
And if you notice, it's one of the boring style shuttles. Once again, Janeway and Chakotay don't get to take the cool shuttle that B'Elanna and Tom seem to get.
As they're crashing, the computer warns of a hydrazine gas leak. So everything is going wrong. Once they crash, Chakotay sees Janeway's badly injured and on the floor of the shuttle, and he tries to revive her, though he is a bit frantic, and we cue the theme song.
And I will note, hydrazine is an actual real gas.
Okay.
And for reference, 50 parts per million is classified as an immediate dangerous threat to life and health. And on the shuttle, it's crossed 112.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Well, she does tell them to evacuate. Yeah. The computer, that is.
So there's a little bit of unwanted education there. Along with, I think they probably really should install seatbelts and airbags.
It's crazy that they don't have seatbelts, yeah.
Shoulder harnesses on the shuttle.
We've only seen that on the Jem'Hadar ships.
Oh.
Remember? In the one...
where they're like hanging...
I don't remember which episode was it? Yeah, where they were upside down.
Yeah. That was the ship.
Was it the ship?
That was the episode with the Vorta and the Jem'Hadar serving canapes.
Oh, with the red dress and the... Yeah. Yeah. I think that's the only place we've ever seen it. After the credits, Chakotay grabs a med kit and is very upset by the medical tricorder readings, which I assume shows that Janeway is dead or near death.
Well, it's doing the beeping that usually means things are going bad.
Yeah. He has to get her out of the shuttle because of the gas leak, so he picks up her lifeless body and carries her to a nearby cave in the storm. Even unconscious or dead, Kate Mulgrew is selling this. Her body looks totally lifeless.
Yes.
Once in the cave, Chakotay works frantically to revive her using CPR and shouting, "Don't you die on me." Eventually, she wakes up and Chakotay is relieved. He tells her to create a homing signal with his comm badge, and he goes to get rations and blankets from the crashed shuttle. When he returns to the cave, he says he saw phaser strikes on the hull, so he's going to go back and run some scans. They decide to not send the homing signal for now in case it reveals their location to the aliens who are trying to kill them.
Yeah, that would make them a little bit of a sitting target.
Chuckles has bad news. The scans of the shuttle show it was the Vidians who attacked them.
Yeah.
This surprises both of them because we're supposed to be way beyond Vidian space. And then suddenly, it gets worse. He detects life forms all around them, and they try and hide in the cave, but some Vidians appear out of nowhere, quickly shooting Chuckles. And instead of shooting, Janeway turns to check on Chakotay, which is crazy. That's not what she would do. She would be shooting.
Oh, yeah.
But she ends up being knocked down and attacked and then strangled by a Vidian. And this does seem terrible, but we immediately jump back to being in the shuttle with Chuckles and Janeway discussing the talent shows. We've kind of gone back to the beginning here.
Did you think, whoa, time loop?
Time loop. They both quickly realize that time has somehow reset, and they wonder if they're stuck in a repeating time loop.
A common problem when you're out with senior staff on an away mission.
Oh, yeah. Either your body gets taken over, you get stuck in a time loop, but it always involves ion storms.
Yeah.
Or a nebula.
Or you end up transferring to a parallel dimension.
Oh, sure. They scan for temporal anomalies and decide to try a different tactic to try and break the time loop. They hail Voyager but don't get a response. A Vidian warship now approaches and they try to escape but ultimately end up getting destroyed. And we jump back to the beginning again with Janeway and Chuckles just looking at each other like, uh-oh.
Oh, I did like that. They didn't even say anything this time. It was the look.
Yep. So Janeway suggests they try a tachyon burst to try and disperse any temporal field that they might be stuck in. This time, they detect 2 Vidian ships approaching. They call Voyager for help and get an answer this time. Tuvok says they're on the way, but it'll take a few minutes. At first, they're not sure if the tachyon burst had any effect, but then suddenly the 2 Vidian ships just disappear, and they celebrate breaking the time loop.
That was loop number 3, right?
Yeah. Voyager arrives, and we return to the bridge where Janeway wants answers. At first, everyone seems to know what she's talking about, but then suddenly everyone is confused, and Janeway realizes she's the only one who remembers being in a time loop. Even Chuckles has no memory of what she's talking about. He has a different memory of the events on the planet.
Yeah, that they just escaped from the Vidians.
Right. So this sends Janeway to sickbay.
I'll admit, at this point, this felt very much like is this one of those repeating time loop episodes? Is this going to be constant versions of the same thing happening?
Groundhog Day.
Yes.
Really bad news in sickbay. The doctor has run a microcellular scan, and somehow Janeway has contracted the phage. She's surprised as they've never contracted the disease before.
Right.
I don't know why. They were all over the phage. The doctor says it's possible it's gotten more contagious and that this is what's causing her hallucinations.
And worse, she's just been all over the ship and on the bridge.
Yeah. Yes, because we don't quarantine anybody.
Yeah, with this now potentially airborne or easily spreadable disease.
And why didn't the transporter... Oh, we didn't transport.
Yeah.
Well, we don't...
They did not transport.
No, they were on the shuttle.
Yeah.
Never mind. But hold on. So if you transport, we run you through some kind of...
biofilter.
Quarantine-y thing. Yeah, biofilter. Yeah. But if you just go down to a planet, get in a shuttle and fly back, we just let you in?
Yeah.
Okay. You know what? That sounds like Star Trek, yeah. The doctor tells her she must stay in quarantine now while he starts looking into the disease again. So he sedates her and says he'll get to work. We jump ahead now, and Janeway wakes up 40 hours later in a different outfit with visible signs of the phage on her hands and face.
Nice makeup effect. It looked gross. Yeah. So nice makeup.
At least no bugs were flying out of it.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that makes a change.
The doctor says he can't find a cure, and the only humane course of action is euthanasia. That escalated very fast.
This episode is wild.
Yes. This is when we know something has gone wrong, right? The doctor's immediate reaction is, we're going to have to kill you.
Now, I don't even remember when you originally watched this, but were you thinking, is she jumping parallels? Like this was like Worf in Parallels?
I don't remember really anything from that long ago, so I'm not sure. But I think having been that close to TNG... maybe, right? That's probably what we would have thought of.
Yeah.
So the doctor put her in a containment field to protect the crew, and now he's using that field to sort of box her in, and he's filling it with a fast-acting neuron toxin.
Yes.
She orders him to stop and even tries deleting him from the computer, but it doesn't work. She seems to suffocate and die right before our eyes again, but ultimately, she ends up right back in the shuttle with Chuckles. I found this scene very disturbing. I could not watch her choke to death because she's too good. And it's like, no, fast forward.
Well, she freaking sells it. That's part of the problem.
Yeah.
You see that sort of the aspect of Janeway here as well. She is clawing on for life, literally.
Yes. I liked her trying to delete the doctor.
Yeah. She does not go quietly into that night.
Not in this whole episode. So in the shuttle now, they see a bright white light in front of them, which they hadn't seen before. Janeway assumes this is the anomaly causing whatever's happening to them.
Yeah.
Chuckle says it's exerting a gravitomagnetic force. That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
They try to avoid it, but it keeps pulling them in. He suggests that they just go into the anomaly instead of letting it tear the shuttle apart.
Yep.
But Janeway says no way. And then there's a flash of white light inside the shuttle, and it seems that the shuttle is destroyed again.
Yeah, he says the hull is breaching, and then flash, reset everything.
But it's important to note they did not fly into the anomaly.
Despite Chakotay being very insistent.
Yes. Let's just go into it. No big deal. But now instead of reverting back to the shuttle again, we're back in the cave where Chakotay was desperately performing CPR.
Yeah.
Janeway's perspective is as an onlooker now as she is standing behind him watching this happen to her own body. This time, events are different and the CPR doesn't work, and the captain dies while Janeway watches. That's confusing. She dies while she watches herself die.
Yes. It's an out-of-body experience.
Correct. Voyager has arrived and are sending a shuttle to help. Chakotay hopes the doctor will still have time to revive her. We jump to sickbay now, and the doctor and Kes try to revive the captain while the other Janeway looks on. It doesn't work, and the doctor announces the captain's death. Again. Chakotay leaves, and the ghost version of Janeway tries to communicate with Kes telepathically.
Yeah.
But there's no reaction. The doctor sends Kes off to the science lab, and Janeway rushes after her, at one point standing directly in her path so that Kes has to pass through her. And at that point, Kes stops, feeling her presence. This makes her call Chakotay and start running. And we're like, now we're on to something.
Yeah. Well, Janeway very ghostly just passes through the door from the sickbay.
Yeah. Well, I suppose because normally she would walk and the door would open.
Yeah.
But instead she just walks right through it. Yeah. In the conference room now, Kes reveals the feeling that she had of Janeway, though Tuvok suggests that she might have imagined it due to stress.
Yeah.
The others suggest maybe Janeway's consciousness phase shifted to a different reality, or maybe she's stuck in an alternate dimension. They have, the usual ideas.
Well, you just have to go back and look at some of the Star Trek episodes from previous seasons. There's 1,000 ways she could be. I mean, even Chakotay, he was displaced into the spirit floating around the ship.
Right. Oh, that was a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we frequently suggest that they should go watch old episodes to catch up on things. Yeah, this has been a good opportunity to do that.
Gives you everything.
They should have had Neelix do that. Remember?
Neelix, here are the data tapes. Go and watch them all.
Well, like in Future's End.
Yes.
Remember he and Kes were watching TV shows? That's the exact same thing. Sit here and watch these. Anyway, they make a plan to start running scans, and Tuvok will work with Kes to try and expand the range of her perceptions.
Yeah.
Janeway is like, this is more like it. We're doing something now. Harry and B'Elanna are running scans in engineering when Janeway sees the white light from the anomaly we saw earlier.
Yeah.
And from the light steps an older dude in an admiral's uniform, and Janeway says, "Daddy?" Now, I don't know. I'm from the Midwest, so I asked this question innocently, but do adults really call their fathers daddy? Is this a thing people do?
I certainly didn't.
No, I never did. I think where I come from, it's something a child would say, not an adult. And it just seems so weird to me, but perhaps it's regional. I don't know. People can write in and tell me, but I'm just like, really? You got Captain Janeway calling her father daddy.
Yeah,
sure.
I think my greeting would be the normal one. Hey, Dad.
Dude, I thought you were dead. Right? Why would she not say that?
Man.
Where'd you come from? But they have to tell us it's her father, right? So this is how they do it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have a dramatic ad break. Janeway asks who he is because her father died 15 years ago. He says, yes, drowned under the polar ice cap on Tau Ceti Prime. She backs away from him, but he says, I raised you to be a doubter and to look at things with a scientific eye, but you died in that shuttle accident. He tells her that when death happens unexpectedly, one's consciousness isn't prepared to let go, and that's the state that she's in, and was also the state he was in when he died. So he did the same thing she's doing now by visiting her and her mother and sister for a long time.
Yeah, he goes on to tell her a story about how when Janeway was grieving, she woke up in the middle of the night convinced that he was in her room with her. And he said, yes, I was. I was there.
Well, she's simply not buying the story that she's a ghost or a spirit, even though he does seem to know a lot about her.
Oh, right. And very specific things like when she was grieving her father.
She says, if you're my hallucination, then you know what I know. That's pretty logical.
Right.
He says, eventually you will cross over, but you have to give up this world. Then you'll move into another state of consciousness, full of joy and wonder. I have to say, he is not selling this.
No.
This guy.
He's a bit like he's selling like siding or double glazing or something.
Yeah. Maybe it's because it's hard to buy that this is Janeway's father. She says the crew is still looking for her and they're not going to give up. But her father says they will eventually give up, which is a bit cruel.
Yeah.
Janeway says she's going to help Kes, and her father says he understands and he lets her go. But now we go to Kes and Tuvok trying to reach Janeway telepathically. Turns out they've been trying for days with no success.
Yeah.
Janeway tries talking to Kes, but it has no impact. She tries talking to Tuvok, but it doesn't make any difference. So Tuvok suggests that since this hasn't worked and B'Elanna and Harry haven't found anything, it might be time to accept the inevitability of the captain's death. Again, now we should watch The Visitor. Let's get Neelix to tune into that episode.
Oh, yeah, right.
Because everybody was telling Jake that Sisko was dead, and he was not.
No. Or even the one with Geordie and Ensign Rowe.
Yeah. So Kes leaves, and Tuvok records a log stating he has to accept that they've lost the captain and he's lost a friend that he can't replace. Janeway keeps trying to reach him without success, and now her dad appears again saying, accepting this will become easier tomorrow once she sees the memorial service.
Oh, Janeway's wake.
So to the memorial service we go, and we start with B'Elanna talking about how she didn't trust Janeway at first, even though she believed in her and made her chief of engineering. But then she pointedly says that with Janeway gone, she thought she wouldn't be able to go on without her. But she realized that Janeway is the one who gave all of us the strength to be stronger than we think we are. This is a weird speech.
Yes.
It's like not exactly moving. It's like, oh, I'm fine now. Everybody's going to be fine.
I will really miss her. But, things are going to be okay tomorrow.
And also, there's no tears, at least not until Harry talks, and he does crack a bit. He gives a little speech about a moment with Janeway that happened off screen. His speech isn't really deep and pretty much ends with him saying, but Janeway would want us to go on and not to be sad. Janeway's the only one crying. It's really, I don't know. I find this whole scene quite cruel.
So what the crew is saying here, is this what Janeway hopes the crew feel about her?
No.
You think this is all made up?
Yes, because they're making, I didn't notice it the first time, but the second time I noticed everything that they were saying was, but we can move on without her now.
Yeah.
Because what she kind of tells her father in the previous scene is, they need me. This is my crew.
Yeah.
They won't give up on me and I'm not going to give up on them. Yeah. But now this scene is saying, oh no, we're fine.
This is structured around, oh, we're fine. We were over it now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I thought it was quite cruel that he was doing this to her because he's trying to get her to go, oh, I guess they don't need me, so I can move on.
Okay.
Because I don't think these speeches are good.
So they're concocted. They're not.
Yeah.
They're not from what Janeway would like to hear from these people.
No. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Oh, and also the next thing that happens is Chakotay says, well, let's party. And they release the pod coffin out into space. I mean, it's just like the whole thing I found so cruel. He's really just trying to convince her that she should just move on.
Would you really get rid of the body like that? Wouldn't you want to keep Janeway?
Yeah.
I mean, the Doctor has all those storage cabinets where he's keeping like bits of the caretaker and, various things. I mean,
no, they're not shooting Janeway out into space.
You're going to want to keep the captain.
So now to kind of stick with the theme, Janeway's dad says, it's over, Catherine. There's nothing left for you here. Come with me. She asks, what do I do to leave here? And he says, just decide. The only thing that keeps you here is your refusal to leave. But she says she's not ready to go. He says hanging around as a ghost is a horrible, lonely existence. But fortunately, Janeway is still defiant. She's still Janeway.
Yes.
She won't abandon her team yet.
I think this is great when Janeway just says to him, I don't care. I'd rather be here in spirit. A captain doesn't abandon ship.
Exactly.
I thought that was really good. I think it really spoke to this person obviously has access to Janeway's memories and her background, but having a complete lack of understanding. If Janeway's dead and in spirit form, she's sticking with them for 70 years till they get home.
Yes. It's like she's put a lot into this plan.
Also thinking about it, on a practical level, I think morale on the ship would be absolutely in the crapper. I mean, I don't see how it wouldn't be.
Realistically, yes.
Yeah. And again, if he had more understanding, he'd portray that.
Well, he keeps pushing her harder and harder, which eventually makes her suspicious.
Oh, yeah, he's pushing way too hard on this.
She forcefully says, I'm staying here. And suddenly she jumps back to the cave where Chakotay was giving her CPR. Though this time, we see the doctor trying to revive her with Chakotay and Tuvok standing behind him. Janeway sees it from her perspective on the ground this time, not as an outside observer.
Yeah.
And then she jumps back to Voyager, and she tells her father what she saw. And he had no idea what she saw, so he's not exactly omnipotent.
Right. This is what I was wondering. So if this entity is in her mind or her consciousness, how did it not see what she did? Or at least be aware of it?
Yeah, he's distracted by something because he was confused.
I'm wondering if it's because he's having to... The Doctor's trying to save her. She's putting up a hell of a fight. So he's having to, if you like, fight multiple battles simultaneously.
Yeah, maybe. And he's just a single being. Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah. She's got maybe a very forceful personality, so this is not what he's used to.
I mean, she beat the clown in the thaw. This guy's nothing compared to that.
Yes. She stared down a computer-generated manifestation of fear itself and won.
Well, her father says, don't worry about that. Don't look over there. That's just another hallucination. But she's like, wait a minute. That's the real me, isn't it? This is the hallucination.
Yes, she's clocked in on it. Beautiful.
She asks, why are you pushing me so hard? Why not just let me come to you when I'm ready? He claims he's trying to spare her from pain, but she knows this is not how her father would behave. She says, "You're not my father, and you have such a specific agenda.
Right.
Who are you?" He says he's trying to help, but she asks if he's an alien being. Technically, we're all aliens here. But now she jumps again back to the cave, and the doctor is encouraged that she's coming around. Tuvok says, but the entity is still inhabiting her cerebral cortex.
Yes, so it's an alien.
Yep. Chakotay tells her to keep fighting. The doctor says synaptic stimulation might drive out the alien presence, and he comes in to shoot something else into her.
Right.
We jump back to Voyager, and we see the light again behind her father, the alien. Although the light now is a different color. It was white before, now it's kind of orange.
It's starting to change color, yes.
She says, "You're an alien, and you created these hallucinations." He relents and says, "This is what my species does. At the moment before death, one of us comes to help you understand what's happening, to make the crossing over a moment of joy." She asks what the light behind him is, and he says, "That's our matrix, where your consciousness will live." She's like, "Why the subterfuge? Why pretend to be my father?"
Yeah.
He says, "Usually people are comforted to see their loved ones. It makes the crossover less fearful."
Oh.
He said he's done this many times, but never encountered someone so resistant. So clearly, he's never met a Starfleet captain. Because they would all be exactly like this.
This is just nasty. I mean, appearing as their loved ones to trick them into his matrix, that is pretty low.
Yeah. We jump back to the doctor saying the alien presence is getting stronger, so he's going to try a Thoron pulse. We shoot something else into Janeway.
Yeah. You know what's next? A radiator.
Just a radiator. 100%.
400 reds, Cass. Let's give it a go.
Back to Voyager, and the alien says it's hopeless. But she says, "You're the one who seems desperate."
Yeah.
Janeway is not buying what he's selling. He grabs her and says, "You must come with me." But she realizes if he could force her to go, he would have done it already. She says, "You need me to go willingly, but I will never choose to go with you." He releases her and says, "You're in a dangerous profession, Captain. You face death every day. There will be another time, and I'll be waiting. Eventually, you will come into my matrix, and you will nourish me for a long, long time." And he steps into the light. Not one to give up the last word, Janeway says, "Go back to hell, coward." And suddenly, the light is red like fire, and he disappears.
Yeah, it's great the way the matrix is slowly being changing color. And it turns into this orange flaming cloud. It's a little bit different from that nice white one we saw earlier.
Indeed.
And I loved it when she confronted him and said, "You're like a vulture, preying on the dying."
Well, that's exactly what he is.
That was a great summary of what was going on here.
It's interesting to think that this is just what this species does.
Right, yeah.
They find somebody dying and try to make it seem like they're taking them into an afterlife or something. I mean, it's freaking cruel.
Oh, yeah. And really, it's like you said, they feed on them.
"I'm going to take your consciousness into my web and I'm going to chew on you for all of eternity.
I will devour your life force." So they're kind of like a space vampire of sorts.
This is not the Matrix we're used to.
Mr. Anderson.
When Janeway wakes up in the cave, they explain to her what happened and how they detected an alien presence in her brain trying to prevent them from saving her. They weren't sure they were going to be able to save her, but she seemed to be fighting it off. She sits up and says, "He kept telling me to go, but I wouldn't." And they're like, "Who are you talking about?" And she says, "The alien, yeah."
So this actually shows something else as well, that this alien kind of aggressively kills these people.
Yeah. She says he wanted to take her to another place, and Chakotay says, "Like the afterlife?" She says, "Maybe, but from what I saw, it's not where I'd like to spend eternity."
If you notice here as well, so now all the senior staff are down there. We have Janeway, Chakotay, and Tuvok.
Yeah. Well, they're trying to save the captain.
Well, something goes wrong. You've got, who's in charge? Harry's in charge?
Harry's in charge. They are in big trouble.
Yeah.
Back on Voyager, and Janeway is back at her desk. She's defying the doctor's orders to relax, of course.
Naturally.
She tells Chuckles that taking it easy always makes her feel worse. And then Chakotay gives her a flower, which is awkward and weird, and they don't explain. She says she'd rather stay busy than dwell on what happened. I think this is a common thing with people.
Yeah.
Chuckles says the alien matrix was like a spider trying to lure a fly into its web. This makes Janeway wonder if all of the near-death experiences they've heard about are the result of an alien inhabitation.
Oh, that's a good one.
They seem to agree that they hope that's not the case.
Yeah.
And she says she hopes his species is unique to the Delta Quadrant and that she'll never see him again.
Well, that's, wishful thinking, possibly.
It's a good thing to hope for because, that was not good for her. Then she says, I cheated death. How about some champagne and a midnight sail on Lake George? And off the two of them go, with Janeway doing a little gleeful bounce out of the door. The end.
Well, maybe she did that because she really did think about it. You could look at this character as like a Grim Reaper, and she did cheat him.
She did cheat death, there's no doubt. The only thing really missing was the guy saying at the end, drat.
There are definitely some parallels with that episode. I mean, let's look at Janeway. She faced fear and won.
Yeah,
and now she's faced down death and walked out.
And soon she'll face the Borg.
Yeah.
And she might win that too. Mm-hmm.
Well, Janeway's a terrible thing to assimilate.
Oh. All right. Do you have overanalysis? By the way, my overanalysis section says deep thoughts. That's what I have when we get to mine.
Oh. Okay. Well, I think the first one is, the crash of the shuttle, I assume that was completely natural. Or do you think
Seems like it. There was really a storm.
Yeah, that had been unpredicted.
I don't know, because they said it came out of nowhere.
Which is where my thinking came from. It seemed a little bit too convenient just there to force the shuttle down.
But he didn't really seem to have power over the outside world.
Yeah, completely telepathic or within their mind.
Yeah. But it's possible.
Yeah.
That's the point of this entire planet. And this planet is actually inhabited by these aliens.
Oh.
And they're able to draw anybody who comes close, they're able to suck them down to the planet and do this exact thing to them. Right? It could be that simple.
That would be pretty nasty.
Yeah.
So they're kind of like space sirens, luring people to their doom.
Exactly.
Interesting.
But who knows? I mean, they didn't explain it, so we're doing a little bit of headcanon there.
Well, yes, I think we are. Because that leads on to, so why are the two most senior people on the ship on a shuttle together? I think this is very bad protocol.
Yeah. It's the kind of thing that seems obvious to us. That should never happen. Yeah. And they shouldn't have all been down on the planet, which had these ion storms that caused them to crash in the first place.
Yeah,
right?
There was an ion strike.
These things seem obvious. All we can imagine and by doing some headcanon is they do stuff like this all the time with no problem. And we only see it when something goes wrong because that's the interesting story. That's, I guess, what we have to believe because it doesn't make any sense that you would put Chakotay and the captain in a shell together. It's like in that episode where they get that disease, right? That shouldn't have happened. Yeah. They shouldn't have been able to both get the disease, but they did.
It should have been maybe Janeway and Harry or Tuvok and Harry or Janeway and Tom, that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's
you've got the whole problem. You can't have Janeway and Tom in a shuttle because they end up having salamander babies. They have to keep those two separated.
Lord.
It's in the operational instructions now.
Yeah.
Okay, next thing.
Yeah.
So the apparent time loops, and then the scene with the Doctor euthanizing Janeway.
Yes.
I assume this was the entity just trying to distract Janeway before it was ready to try and take her into the Matrix. Or did it need time to read her mind to find the best approach? I assume this was all delaying while it set up the trap, as it were.
Well, yeah, I was wondering that too. I think that's one of the points in my overanalysis. But maybe now having walked through it, maybe he was just trying... It was just iterations of him trying to get her to agree to go through.
Oh, well, I guess
because he kept killing her, right?
Right.
He's like in the repeat, and it's not. And she was already dying on the planet through the whole thing.
Yeah.
But he couldn't get her to give up, so he was just trying over and over. Like the Doctor killing her, he's like, "You got to give up now." Oh. Well, that didn't work. Well, let's try a memorial service. Got to give up now. I just feel like he is just trying to get her to go, okay. Or the one where it's like Chakotay saying, let's go into the light.
Right. But we only saw the last of the iterations was the one on the shuttle where we saw the glowing cloud that Chakotay was pushing really hard to fly into. So that was the only one I thought where it looked like he was trying a different approach to get her into the Matrix.
Right, but none of those were working, so then he played a longer game.
Yeah.
Of having her get to the Voyager so he could get her to the memorial service, so he could appear as her father. I think he was just like, the short things probably work, usually.
Oh, yeah, okay.
He's like, that didn't work. Try it again. Still didn't work.
So he was ultimately just trying to get her to give up with those earlier ones. Yeah.
He was iterating.
Gotcha. Okay.
I mean, admittedly, I didn't quite get that while watching it. It just sort of has occurred to me now through this conversation.
Yeah, I was thinking it was more of he needed time to set up. But yeah, if the easy approach works first time, all good.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Next thing, I really like this vulture analogy.
Mm-hmm. Because that's what he is.
Yeah, is this thing just hanging around in subspace, just following...
Preying on dead bodies,
Yeah, sentient creatures waiting for accidents and then jumping in and feeding on them.
He had to get to that asteroid with all the dead bodies on it.
Oh,
that's
man.
perfect for him.
Yeah. They wouldn't even have to kill them before transport. He could just get back to their dimension or wherever they're from and take their consciousness.
The space vulture.
Yeah. So yeah, I just picture this thing as just picking people off every now and then.
Ugh.
That does make it pretty horrific.
It's a little scary.
Looking at it that way, this is like another horror episode.
Yeah.
And I think that actually wraps up my overanalysis.
Okay. Here's my deep thoughts.
Okay, deep thoughts.
Was this the devil?
Oh.
Is this Barton Fink level devil? And the reason I ask is I'm not sure I would have thought of it, except for the way they changed the color of the light. At the end, it almost changed to flames.
Yeah.
Are we doing some sort of Christian thing of now this is the devil?
Well, maybe that was happening because of Janeway's perception of what it was. Of saying, go back to hell.
Oh, maybe.
So he was taking on that character because he'd already lost by that point. I don't think so. I think what you were seeing here was an alien that preyed on people at the point of death. And Star Trek was doing that thing where you throw in a little bit of spiritualism, as it were, to make it just that little bit more interesting, make you question it.
I don't know. We often see the writers trying to reconcile their fear of death and skepticism about an afterlife.
Oh, yeah.
In this way, this is relatively common in Star Trek. And I kind of dig it every time they do it. We were talking earlier about the asteroid planet with the bodies on it. I mean, that was the same thing, right?
Oh,
because ultimately in that story, there was an afterlife for those people, but it was one that they couldn't really, that the Voyager crew couldn't really understand because their energy was being sort of projected out, right?
Into this planet.
Was it the ring around the planet or something?
The energy field.
And that's just a good example of it. And there was the Sacred Ground episode where there was a bit of spiritualism mixed in there.
Yes.
And I know we've had other episodes where we've said, what are we talking about here, right? There's some religious overtones to it. And it's so interesting.
So much of Deep Space Nine.
I listened to Ronald D. Moore. I saw him at WonderCon, but I also listened to him on Katie Sackhoff's podcast. And they were talking about this exact thing that I brought up before, which is that when you're doing science fiction, it's safe to bring up religion because you're just making up religion, you're making up people, you're making up the whole thing. And maybe you're not calling it religion, you're calling it something else. You're calling it spiritualism or whatever. Yeah. But it's safe in this context because it's not real. So nobody's bringing their baggage with, a particular religion that you're either talking about negatively or positively, causing other people to get upset because this is made up.
There aren't actually any Bajorans following the prophets.
Yeah, so I think it's really, when I say I dig it, that's what I mean. Yeah. It's really cool that they're able to explore stuff like this and it doesn't get tangled in anybody's current argument or current political or religious type arguments. And I really like it.
Oh, I would agree. They've used an element of spirituality to enhance stories. And this is another example of one.
But it really makes me think that this was a symbol of the devil.
Yeah. Interesting.
Because of that. Yeah. That's why I think that is what this was representing.
That's an interesting take. I took more of a Janeway approach of it's just an alien feeding on the life force of other beings.
Well, it's funny how different we look at these things because you had a similar reaction to Sacred Ground.
Yeah.
Because you thought those aliens were really just jerks. And I was like,
yes.
Those guys are just living their lives and we have barged into their world. And it's like I looked at it from a more religious kind of way. And you looked at it like, no, it's a science fiction story. They're aliens.
Right.
So it's funny how we're looking at it like this. When we watched, I bring Barton Fink up on purpose because at the end of Barton Fink, if you haven't watched Barton Fink, you should watch Barton Fink.
Yes, 1000% you should watch it. John Goodman is amazing.
It's an extremely weird movie. But it's the Coen brothers, so you have to expect that. But once you kind of get into it, it's unbelievably cool.
Yeah.
And there's something sort of similar at the end where you go, oh, that's the devil. But it's not explicitly laid out to you, but it's something you realize as part of the story. And it's wild. And I'm not sure if when I first realized that, did that make me start to look at stories differently after that? Or is this just kind of what stories are always like, but it doesn't always get me? I don't always get the symbolism. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I see such parallels here between those two stories. They couldn't be any more different.
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't go watch Barton Fink thinking you're going to see Star Trek. It is not
There
that.
are no time
loops.
Something, yeah, definitely
no, it is something completely different.
Yeah.
But there's just, I think maybe the symbolism in that movie really impacted me.
Yeah. Oh, I can see the parallel between, if you like, one of the reveals within Barton Fink and in this story as well.
There are movies where there are big reveals and sometimes it just seems so cheesy. In that movie, you can actually miss that and still enjoy that movie.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like that. It's not like a big Sixth Sense ending. It's not like that.
One of the things I think is funny about Barton Fink is, to a large extent, sort of like the reveal has been there in your face the entire time.
The entire time, yeah. Yeah, it's a cool movie. The next thing in my deep thoughts was, what was with the time loop? Why do we keep resetting?
When you say that, I keep thinking about back to the start of Hitchhiker's Guide, the computer called Deep Thought.
Oh, I don't remember that. But we already sort of talked about why we kept resetting, so maybe we don't need to revisit that. I did wonder what was with the phage, but again, it was just him trying to make her give up. So I think we understood that.
That makes me think of something right now. If she'd agreed to being euthanized, would have that put her in the Matrix? Because she would have given up. And the doctor was trying to tell her, oh, it'll be a long and painful death and you'll suffer and it's terrible.
He was trying lots. He was really being horrible.
Yeah.
No wonder she told him to go back to hell. The last thing in my deep thoughts is, was the message that these aliens really just eat everybody's consciousness, like they're everywhere in subspace? Yeah. Or do we think it's just specific to this part of space, or even just this planet?
If you take the line about how maybe out-of-body experiences, these aliens are causing them, that would point towards they're everywhere.
Yeah, so this is somebody's view of death.
Maybe.
If that's the case, yeah.
The other side of it is, because Janeway now has experience with this and can write about it and can inform people, and nobody else has ever been able to do this, and they don't know about it to this point, I would say maybe it is a localized phenomenon. That just this area of space, this is where, or maybe even, like you say, this planet is where these aliens are hanging out, and this is their feeding ground.
I hope they put up a beacon.
Yes, see, right. Put up a buoy with...
warn people off, yeah.
Very bad aliens live here.
Very bad. Turn around.
Turn around. Detour.
All right. Well, women in the future in Janeway's leadership corner, there's nothing really to say because it wasn't real, right? Nothing that happened was really part of the story. So it's hard to analyze episodes like this when it's all on the holodeck.
Yeah.
So let's just go to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
Okay. This episode is absolutely wild. It starts off and you think, is this a time loop? And then, is this a parallel dimension where the doctor just euthanizes her? What's going on?
Yeah.
And then the way it resolves and down to, oh, it's like an alien vulture who is waiting for you to die so it can feed on you. It's a really fascinating episode. Absolute thumbs up. The only problem with it is because you know what's going to happen, it reduces the impact in rewatching. But watching this for the first time, this would have absolutely blown our minds because it was so wild. And it's a good episode to watch now, even though you know the twist, but it's still great. And that ending it's really pure Janeway of no, you're dragging me down to hell. I'm not going without a fight. So absolute thumbs up. Great Janeway episode. Thoroughly enjoyable.
I also give it a thumbs up. I think in the rewatch yesterday, I picked up some things I hadn't seen the first time, and maybe I'd pick up some things again if I, watched it again. sure, you know how it's going to end, but I mean, let's be honest. We always know how it's going to end. I mean,
yeah, Janeway did not leave the show.
Janeway's going to come out of it fine. Yeah, exactly. But no, I get your point. We know that's not her father, and I kind of would argue that we knew that when we were watching it. So I don't know. I think it's rewatchable.
Yeah.
But not the scene where the doctor kills Janeway. I couldn't watch that the first time. I fast forwarded through it both times I watched. Horrible.
The way Janeway is struggling and fighting.
It was horrible. Yeah. I actually thought Robert Beltran was pretty good in this episode. I mean, he's not in it a lot, but I thought he was pretty good.
I don't know whether it's the writing or his portrayal of the character. I would probably lean towards writing. He seems to have softened a lot more.
Yeah.
It seems to fit the actor more.
Now, the actor who played Janeway's father, this is a veteran actor who's been in a lot of things.
Yeah.
His name is Len Cariou. Might be pronouncing it wrong, not sure. But I didn't really feel like he was selling me on an emotional level.
Yeah.
Like, I think about the guy who played the father in Remember with B'Elanna.
Yes.
Now, that guy wasn't playing B'Elanna's father, but was playing the father of the person who she was embodying, right? He really sold it.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. Normally, these character actors they bring in to fill these roles, I think are pretty strong. But this guy maybe leaned more into the alien part of it than he did lean into the emotional part to try to get, Janeway to believe that he was really her father. So I think that could have been, I hate to criticize the actor, but I think that could have been better.
Yeah.
But still, this is a very Trekky episode with the elements of horror that we're getting used to in Voyager, and I really enjoyed it, especially considering that the last one we watched, I won't say which one, which was out of order, was not good. This one was good.
Oh, that's funny.
You'll know about that soon enough.
Well, maybe I'll comment on the acting of the father. I felt he was leaning in towards, like I said, selling it more like a salesman, selling sightings than an emotional element. I think that maybe was a choice in the acting and the directing, that if you like, this being wasn't that good at selling it because they've never had to.
Well, good point. And I think he was also getting madder and madder that he couldn't get her in.
That's where I think his acting really worked, because he starts off that thing of being sort of soft and, oh, Catherine, blah, blah, blah. And then he slowly gets more and more angry throughout it. And he sort of becomes this much less sympathetic character. So I think, I wonder, I think that was a deliberate choice.
Okay. I'll allow it.
Well, thank you.
Well, that wraps up Season 3, Episode 15. Come back next week for Episode 16. In the meantime, if you want to send us your own overanalysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, you can email us at ReBingeIT@gmail.com. Or you can reach out to us on the socials. We're on Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, and YouTube at ReBingeIT. And we're on the Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/Star Trek TTM podcasts.
Thanks for joining us on the ReBinge Star Trek Voyager podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.